Hello friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop. It's just after 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. on Wednesday, March 7th, 2017 here in the shop. And I've already had a pretty full day. I cut a big load of firewood already. You know, if you know what a Polaris Ranger is, enough to fill it up at least twice, which it holds quite a bit. Plus I have a rack on the back, which you can stack it a lot higher. So it's almost a pickup load worth of wood, I would say, or pretty close to it when you stack it that much like I do and fill it up. So anyway, I did all that. I cut that load of wood this morning early, and I emptied out a Bobcat bucket full of ashes out of my wood furnace. I'm not kidding, a full bucket full of a Bobcat bucket full. You know, some people have 4 or 5 buckets full of ashes per winter. I do too, but they're Bobcat buckets full. And I'm not exaggerating, that's the truth. So I did all that before 7:45 this morning. Went in and cleaned up a little bit because I was just covered in sweat, ash, dirt, sawdust. And now we're going to have a typical morning in the workshop here working on instruments. I've got, the first one up is a fiddle, and I'm going to try to address, you know, get started on a bunch of instruments this morning. They've been sitting here a while, and I hate that. I do not like to have instruments sitting around. This one's been here since February 27th, so it's not that long, but it's been a while, and this is the oldest one that's been sitting. He said he's not in a hurry, but we're going to get it fixed up. This is a fiddle that came from Canada somewhere. I don't see a town on the little business card here. But anyway, it came from Canada. I've got a note in here from the customer. Amherst NS. I don't know where that is, but somebody might if they're from Canada. And anyway, it just says, thank you for being willing to repair this old violin. He's thought about having it repaired many times over the last 20 years. Here's a list of things that he thinks it needs. The tailpiece needs repair, the sound post, the fingerboard, the neck needs to be re-glued, or unglued it says. The peg box needs attention, and you know, cracks in the headstock peg box, and all that needs to fit up well. You know, basically it would be the equivalent of the full meal deal on the violin. That's really what it amounts to. I'm basically just going to do whatever it needs to fix it up and make it right. And I've already looked at this violin. Even though it's been sitting here a while, I know it needs some major attention. This thing's, you know, if you just look at it at first glance, you think, oh, that's not too bad. This thing needs some attention, let me tell you. Okay, well, let's just start off with the easy stuff. Here in the peg head, it's cracked right across here, and that's not good because it goes right into that peg hole. It's also cracked on this side right into this peg hole. That's a tough fix in a way because, you know, you're going to force that peg in there, and those pegs are tapered, and it's always going to want to bust that hole back out. Regular glue, even as good as Tight Bond is, might not hold it. The sad thing is this has already been re-glued by an amateur with some kind of other glue, perhaps. Maybe they used Tight Bond, I don't know, but it probably wasn't clamped real well. So now it's even worse because glue doesn't stick to glue real well. About the only glue that sticks to itself real well is super glue. And other than that, and that's not a real good option for super glue, and I doubt super glue would hold it either. So that's going to be a harder fix than you would think. This is a tough fix right here. But that's probably one of the easier fixes on this fiddle. What a mess. No, this thing's really got issues. Somebody's replaced the fingerboard over the years, and when they did, they replaced it with, they didn't plane the fingerboard down. These fingerboards come rough from the factory. And they're not intended to go directly on the instrument, but that's the way this one was applied. It went straight on the instrument. And so it's real thick, real heavy, real clunky, and it's wide. And look, it's also sitting right on the top of the fiddle. The neck is broke across here, which is also a tough fix. That tab, you know, you think of it as being insignificant, but it is very significant. As a matter of fact, it probably has more to do with holding this neck on, for sure, than most people think, but it probably has more to do with holding the neck on than the actual joint does. Because what that does, if you think about it like this, that neck's always wanting to be pulled like this. Well, that heel plate is sitting here, holding onto that. It keeps it from sliding forward. So there's a ton of pressure keeping that from sliding forward on that heel plate. That heel plate really is very important on holding that neck in there. Okay, so that's broke. That's not an easy fix either, but I know how to fix it. But it might entail taking the back off, and it probably will. But that may not be all that bad either, because the back needs some work. This back joint here is really bad. You know, the sound post, that's a piece of cake. There's nothing to that. This bridge is pretty clunky and very low. Obviously, it's real low because, but this, you know, as you know, because this is so down, you can throw a dog through here. I mean, there's just all kinds of room in there. But the bottom line is, it looks decent, but it's basically a wreck. So we're going to get started on this, and you know, it's just going to be another order of operations. What do you do first? What has to be done first before you go to the next thing? Well, there's 2 or 3 things that could be done first on this, and that really wouldn't make too much difference. But first thing, the very first thing we do is take it apart. I mean, just everything's got to come off of it. It's got to come apart because you can't work on it with strings on it. So here we go. Okay, basically I've got this violin taken apart, and I wanted to show you there's a specialty tool made for taking off these chin rests, and it fits in these little holes, and it's got a little stiff wire on the end of it here, and that will spin these little adjusters. And why I'm pointing that out is that this is good for this because it won't stick all the way through, and it won't go through far enough where it'll scratch the instrument, see? What happens is people stick like paper clips through there, and they stick ice picks through there, or they stick a little tiny screwdriver through there, maybe like for adjusting eyeglasses, and they spin that, and then they scratch the wood. And you can see how this one has been dotted all the way across there over the years. So anyway, that's just a tip. If you do use something other than the special tool, well, just be sure you don't stick it all the way through the hole and so that it scratches the wood when you spin it. We've got the rest of the instrument apart, and I've taken off the tailpiece. The tailpiece actually looks fine. I like the new tailpieces with the adjusters built in myself. That's my preference. I doubt the orchestral people out there in the world care for those. I don't know, but I prefer those rather than these adjusters that they're just these kind of are a little bit painful to me. They work fine though. I mean, so we're going to go ahead and keep this, and since he's got adjusters on every string, I do like adjusters on every string. I think that's very handy. I'm just tightening these down so they don't fall off and get lost somewhere. I'm going to put this in the case. I've also taken out the tuning pegs, and I marked each one. You can probably see there's the letter A on that one, and letter E on this one. And so anyway, I've marked every one of them so I know where they go back. Now the problem with these pegs here is basically the very same problem as with this fretboard. And what do I mean by that? Well, they sell these things, and the intention is they sell them full size, and you're supposed to turn them down, shave them down to fit the peg holes. Well, instead of that, they pretty much reamed these holes out, and so these holes are very big now, which I hate a lot. For a couple of reasons. It weakens it. Now there's very little wood in here left. So I may have to do some sort of a fix to this to try to fix that whole thing up. I really don't like this whole peg box thing, especially with the cracks up here. I am not exactly sure how I'm going to tackle it yet, but it's probably going to be fairly dramatic because it's never going to work well the way it is. It's just been botched pretty much by an amateur. So if you get new pegs, you really need to get a peg shaver or something to turn them down to make them smaller to fit your holes rather than the other way around, making the holes fit the pegs. That's that's the second violin tip there this morning. Okay, so we're putting the rest of these parts in the case. Now, and by the way, this bridge here, because it's been cut so very low and it's thick as a 2x4, I'm just throwing this in the trash. I'm not even going to save this for the customer because, number one, it's not going to fit this violin ever again after I put the neck back the correct way and get the angle higher. This would be way too low. And number two, I would never even use this on a, really cheap violin because it's just clunky and junky and it's just junk. So it's going in the trash. That leaves us with the skeleton here, the body. And you can see that the neck isn't even on there, there's a lot of crack in the neck. I'm just going to take my fingers and just see if I can pop it loose from there. I doubt it. It probably is tighter than that. Yeah, it seems to be tighter than that. Okay, I thought maybe I might get lucky, because once in a while you do. I've got my little bridge removal tool here, and I'm going to see if it'll slide in this slot and just get lucky and pop that bridge off. It doesn't look like it's going to. It's going to, I could force it and make it work, but we're going to need to get the heat out. So we'll get some heat on this and see what happens. I got the iron out here. It's already pretty hot. I'm going to set that on here. In case you're deciding to use an iron for your heating element, which I use it, I've been using it for years. It works fine for me. It gets plenty hot. In case you're going to do that, though, most of these irons these days have automatic shut-offs on them. So if you set it down and balance it there and let it set, it will shut itself off like that. It will eventually, in just a few minutes, it'll shut itself off, or a few seconds, really. So I took this one apart and modified that switch, so it doesn't do that anymore. It stays on. So it's very handy for me. The wife never will miss this iron. Nobody irons anymore, right? I'm the only one that irons anymore. Anyway, I'm just heating this up real good. It says 144 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not that hot yet. 179 degrees Fahrenheit, and for you centigrade folks, that's 81 degrees centigrade. 239 degrees Fahrenheit, 115 degrees centigrade. So we're almost up to the boiling temperature of water. It loses temperature really fast when you take the iron off of it, I will tell you that. It takes a little while for the heat to get down through the wood. You just have to be careful that you're not burning the actual wood. 266 degrees Fahrenheit that time it said, which is 130 degrees centigrade. I'm going to call that good for the moment. Let's just see if we can get any movement here. No, it doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it's helped anything at this point. So we may have to go to the, this fingerboard, keep in mind, is almost twice as thick as it should be. So it's even harder to get the heat down to the glue. Yeah, that heating up the knife helps a lot. It's sliding under there a little bit further now, but there we go. Came off pretty clean. You can see there's a little piece of extra wood laid in there to try to get the neck angle up a little bit, but they were not very successful. Okay, so now you can see how big and thick this is. It's also thick in here. It's just crazy heavy. This is like putting a 2x4 on a violin. It's just way too much. Way too much. Okay, now we've got the neck issue itself. You can see the neck has pulled loose here a lot as it's broke across here. I'm just going to manhandle it a little bit to see if it's got any looseness to it. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It's actually very tight. So You know, I don't feel any wiggle there at all, which is kind of sad because it would be so much easier if it would just wiggle and pop out of there. Okay, so because it's not doing that, I'm going to try the same tactic down through the back of the neck heel and see if we can get the glue to melt down through here. There it came out, and it didn't really damage anything, as you can see. Came out pretty clean. There's a lot of buildup and glue and junk on here. To get this little thin strip of, it's mahogany is what it is, to get that off of this maple neck, I'm just going to use my little finger plane and get rid of it. It's glued on there, and I might be able to heat it and get it off of there, but it'll come off just as fast this way or faster. You can see how it planes it down to the bare wood there in just a matter of seconds, and if you're careful, you can keep from taking off the maple. You're just taking off, if you look at these shavings, there's a little tiny white one there, but that may have come from something else. But you just pay close attention, and you can literally shave it right down to the maple without taking off the maple. I think we're going to end up taking the back off of this, and you'll see why later. In order to make this tab solid again, it's better to just take the back off, and I don't think that's that big an issue, like I said, because it's all messed up along here anyway. Okay, after closer inspection, I found that little crack between the glue and the top right in here. That gives me an opening. What I'll do is heat up the knife and start working on that opening very carefully. Using the X-Acto knife as a scraper. There's even a lot of glue out here on the stained part, and I'm just going to go ahead and take it all down to bare wood. There, it popped right off. That's what we wanted, just to pop it off of there. And now I'm going to attach this to the back, hopefully without a seam, much of a seam anyway. You can see it came off of there pretty clean. A little bit of glue left over, but not much. Alright, there's a lot of glue just on the surface here. And, you know, you just can't do a good job with all that gunk on there. So, I mean, it goes all over the place, and it's going to scar this up real bad when I take it off, but it's got to come off. So I'm just going to scrape it off. Okay, now the question is, what do we do about this mess in here? Well, I don't like all these great big holes in this peg box, but I guess I'm going to try to live with those, at least for now. So what I'm going to do instead is, on the inside of this peg box, I'm going to carve away a little bit of the wood, put in a piece of wood on the inside of the box on both sides that'll probably cover this hole between these two holes, and between these two holes on this side all the way in here, and try to cover this whole crack area with a splice of wood where the grain of the wood will be running this way perpendicular to that crack, so it won't crack again. And then we'll have to re-drill this hole and re-bore this last hole here. That's the best I can come up with. It's going to be tight working down in there, because that's where I got to go to make this all happen. And so I'm going to give it a shot. That's about the only thing I can come up with that'll make sense for fixing this. I can see all the way down in here where it's cracked alongside this piece of wood. It's cracked between this piece of wood and this piece of wood, and the crack goes down through to here, and so it's a tough fix, man. I don't know if I can get in there and cut this out enough to get a splice across that crack or not. That's what I really need to do, and so we're going to give it a shot. I think what I'm going to do is get a Dremel tool with a long bit and get in there and cut it out. That's the only way I can see to get to it. Okay, down you're going to see what I can see in this, but I'm down, I can see the cracks on the inside, and I'm down past the cracks. I'm down to about here. So that gives me some room to put in my patch. It's got to be cleaned up, of course, and smoothed off, and I'll do that with a chisel here, try to clean it up, get it smooth. I'm actually going to chisel off a little bit of the wall thickness in order so that when I put my patch in there, they'll, you know, I can leave some of the patch thickness. Otherwise, the patch would stick out in the box too far. Have a piece of maple here, and of course the grain is running this way in the maple. It's not quarter sawed exactly, but it's kind of a 45 sawed. But anyway, the point is that the grain on this wood will go through. I'm going to try to go perpendicular through this crack. The crack, if I'm explaining it, the crack would go this way, so this needs to go at about this angle to be perpendicular. So what I want to do is cut a patch that will fit this whole area here, and roughly all I'm going to do is just try to draw it out by hand. This piece here is thick enough that I'm hoping I can get both pieces out of this one thing. I think that it'll be the mirror image of this one, I think, on this side. I'm not sure. But roughly what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw it out, and it's just a rough drawing. I'm just kind of penciling around where the peg box goes and where I want this cut, and probably like this, something like that. I mean, it's just a rough idea. I'm going to cut that out on the little bandsaw and see how it looks like it fits in there, and we'll bring you back. Alright, probably can't see this very good, but this little wedge of wood that I have in there now, I've got it shaped to approximately the right shape that I want. It's kind of a funky looking shape. What I'm hoping to do now is literally saw it right down the middle line here, and half of it will go on the one side and the other half will go on the other side. Now, a lot of things depend on doing that. My little bandsaw blade sometimes is sharp enough to saw a straight line, and sometimes it's not. Hopefully today will be one of those days where it'll saw a straight line. Because it's got a very thin kerf, and as long as I can come out with about 100 thousandths on each side, I'm pretty good. That worked pretty good. I sawed it right down the middle freehand. I just literally pushed it through the blade, and I think we've got enough there to work with. We don't have any too much, but then again, we don't have a lot of space in here anyway, so that's going to be fine. Now I just need to taper this down in the depth of this. It'll be thick where the crack is, and then come out to feather edge thin here. The rough sawed part is the part that you'll see inside there, so I'm going to sand the rough sawed part smooth first. There we go. I think that'll work. That's the ends. That's the part that you're going to see. This one is going on the left side, I guess you'd say, of the peg box, and just going to see how well it kind of fits in there. Looks like it fits pretty good. What I'd like to do to make it easier is to make the taper a little longer in here, and just based on what I can see. So I'm going to try to just taper back a little further to get it a good straight taper, because it's a little bit bowed there, I think. That's good. That's very good. Good and flat. It matches up really good to inside there. I don't know if you will be able to see that or not, but it matches up really, really tight, you know, against the side. And I don't see any air spaces. Now what I'm going to do is taper it from this from this top edge. That's where we're going to cut most of the taper down to nothing down there. So again, I don't want to get this turned around the wrong way, so I'm going to mark what I want to cut off. I want to cut off this top edge here, and then to almost nothing. As you can see, I'm making this dark up here. This is where I want to do most of my angle, and then down to literally nothing down there. So that's how we're going to taper it from here down. What I have in mind to try, and I don't know that this will work very good, I have a feeling the heat might create a problem when I'm sanding this, but I'm going to double stick tape glue this to the end of this little stick right here. And you know, I just need a way to hold it, and then that way I can put this top edge against the little sanding wheel, have it like this, and just kind of rock it into it a little bit, just push it in there where it's cutting this top and not cutting the bottom. And if I don't, you know, get too aggressive, I don't think it'll get so hot that it'll turn loose, but then again it might. So good to report that that worked pretty good. You can probably see how thin it is here on this edge and how thick it is on this edge. And keep in mind, this is the part that'll be exposed. You'll be able to see this. So this part here on this, we're going to go in here like so, and stick it in place and just kind of see what it looks like here. Actually, it's pretty good right there. It's a little bit how you get it in there. Maybe you can see down in there. Alright, off camera I shaved a lot more out of the inside of the peg box here, and I say a lot more, just enough to make this thing fit flat and flush, and now I can press on it anywhere and it still just lays there flat and flush. And that's what I'm going for. I feel very confident that we've got a good tight joint, and we didn't take up hardly any room in the peg box, and we'll shave it down a little bit more after it dries too, so that you really won't hardly be able to tell that we did anything in the peg box here. Okay, so now we're going to glue that. I'm just going to use regular tight bond to glue it because I really want a good strong wood to wood bond here. I think we've about got her whipped there. I just need to taper this one now and glue it in place. Alright, so I need to taper this one from here, the heavy part, down to nothing. Okay, we're going to glue the other side in there now. I think I have a way to glue this in here, or to clamp it in here. I'm going to use a backwards wedge and then these little forward wedges to just press it in there tight. And actually, that's going to work right there. It's pressing them both, and I can see the glue squeeze out all the way around on both of them there. Looks good. Looks real good. I'm tickled with that. Let's see if I can just go ahead and put a little extra pressure on it there with this extra wedge. That looks good. That looks real nice. I think we've done a good thing there. Because there was so much pressure pressing out with these wedges, I decided to put this little clamp on the outside here and squeeze it tight too. And I don't really see much additional squeeze out, but I think it's a good idea to make sure that that crack doesn't open up. Alright, I just sat this little heel block here, this little heel piece in there to see how it looks like it fits, and it does look like it fits pretty well. I don't know if there's any wood missing or not. It looks like that's the way it was originally as far as I can tell. Alright, so how are we going to get that to glue and make it strong again so that it will hold that neck? Well, it would be almost impossible if this is all we were going to do. But I think the easiest way in this particular case to do it is go ahead and glue it in place right just where it should be, like this. Get it back and glue it in place. Leave it set up and get good and strong as hard as we can let it set up that way. Then we will take on the other side here and we will route out and put in a piece of wood that would run across this whole joint. This top is opened up a little bit right here too, so this is a good opportunity to re-glue this. Anyway, I'm just going to glue this piece in here and glue this piece in. Well, I'm trying to decide how I'm going to route this out. You know, this is flopping around. I mean, at one time, and I don't know if I've still got it, but I had a perimeter made where I could set this on top of there and it would hold it on the perimeter like this and make it fairly stable. But even if I had that, trying to route this area, this is not flat here exactly. So I'm almost thinking I'm just going to route it by hand with the Dremel tool. I think I'll have better control and get it exactly like I want it. I'll have to flatten it out with a chisel in the, you know, at the end, but I think I can get the perimeter and everything done the way I want it with a Dremel tool, just freehand. I really feel more confident in my ability that way. Somebody else may feel totally different, but that's the way I feel that I'll be more confident in doing this. So that's how I'm going to do it. Now I've got the bit chucked up in there pretty far because I want to have real tight control, like a pencil type deal. I think I'll just go ahead and draw a perimeter on there of what I want to route out. I want to come across this whole area as much as I can, and yet I want to leave the outside edges of this so I don't mess that up. So I'm going to do it kind of like this. Something along those lines. The exact shape doesn't really make too much difference. A wedge like that is even stronger because then it can't pull out, so that's a good deal. Alright, I have a little thing routed out in there. It's not very deep yet, but because of this being so thin through here, I've got to take it very cautiously. So I'm going to check how much depth we've got right here right now with my depth gauge, and we can see roughly how thick we are. We're at about 90 thousandths thick right there right now. Hundred and 10 thousandths there. Just checking to make sure. So the thinnest place is about 90 thousandths, so we're still pretty good. That's still fairly good meat. I'm just going to lightly take off a little more so that hopefully this patch can be 20 or 30 thousandths thick. Okay, it appears to have a pretty flat bottom. It looks pretty good. You know, it's not very deep, to be perfectly honest with you. We're probably only 30 thousandths deep or something like that. I don't even know if I can have a way of measuring that, but that says 50 thousandths. I don't think the whole thing's that deep. Let's just see. It says 60 thousandths. I don't know. Maybe it is that deep, but I don't think it is. This says 48 thousandths. Okay, 45 thousandths. So we're in the 40 thousandths to 50 thousandths range there. That's going to be good enough. It'd be nice if we could make it deeper, but I don't feel comfortable going much deeper. Now I'm just going to take the chisel and flatten out the whole bottom of the patch here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a piece of paper, lay it on here, and kind of trace the outline of this. First of all, I think I'll just show you that this piece of paper I cut fits the hole pretty close. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. I've already thinned this wood down. Maybe you can see that the one end is thinned down much thinner than the rest of it. That way I can just poke it in there, pull it out, poke it in there, pull it out of the thickness sander. And now I'll just glue this piece up to this, and then we'll saw it out real tight to this piece of paper. For this type of application, the easiest way to glue that to the piece of paper is just a glue stick. I just rubbed a glue stick on the wood and then stuck the paper to it, and that's good enough for this quick little cutout. Okay, because I cut all this with a rounded, with a little tiny round bit, then the edges are kind of rounded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slope all these edges with my file. Now this is the edge that's going down the bottom side of the patch. And I'm just going to round off the corners so that they'll more closely fit what I routed out there. That looks pretty close. So I'm just going to knock this off right here with the sander and round it again and see if we can get it to fit in there. I think you can see that it's starting to fit the hole pretty closely there. It's not perfect, but it's almost down in there. In fact, I guess I'd say it is down in there. A little tweaking here and there. It looks like this corner could be knocked off a little bit, so I'm going to do that with just hand files. That feels pretty darn good. I don't know how I could get it much better. Now the paper's on here, of course, and that makes it look weird, but that paper will come off when we flatten it out. Maybe I'm feeling just the tiniest amount of movement right here, and it's coming off this back edge, so I'm going to round this back edge off a little bit more. No, that's good. I'm going to call that good. We're going to put some glue in there, clamp this thing, and let it set, and let that glue set up really good. Give it a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours to set up, and then we'll clean this all up. Even though this is a very soft clamp, I'm going to put a piece of leather under here, partly to help it just contour to the top, and then we'll just clamp her down as tight as we can get this little clamp to go. I really think that was the way to go on fixing that. You just can't make things like this too secure, so you've got to go back and figure out ways to, make it not break again, and this way it just won't break again. I'm just 99% sure. Alright, this part of the violin is where the problems have been occurring, and you can see there's just globs of crap in here, and the sides are pulled away from that block, and this block has got to be probably the smallest neck block I believe I've ever seen. They don't need to be real big, but this one is really tiny, and I just don't like it. I think it's just made kind of, it's good in one way that it's light and airy, but there's almost less wood in that than there are in these corner blocks, which is kind of silly. There really is, they've gone to overkill on making this tiny. And I think it wouldn't hurt to make this just a little bit more beefy. And I'm tempted to just take this out of here and cut a whole new neck block for this. Some people would say, no, you shouldn't do that, but I don't know. I don't think we're going to hurt anything. Sides don't want to work up to it very well. That's probably just from prior repairs, but I don't know. The only thing that's holding the neck block in here right now is to the top. It's not stuck to the sides at all. If you're ever going to replace it, now is the time to replace it. I guess I'll clean it up first and see if it makes any sense to keep it. And if it stays in place while I'm cleaning it up, maybe we'll keep it. They put a shim in here to take up neck space there. So I'm cutting that shim out. I'm just trying to get it roughed opened up just to see how the neck fits it. If the neck doesn't fit this block real well, then I'm pretty sure we're going to replace it. It's going past it a little bit here. It would be nice if it was tighter. It's a little bit loose. It's not too bad though. It's not terrible. I mean, I could shim it myself and make it better, but it's also just not cut very square for this neck. This neck is pretty square. It's not easy to do, but I think I can do a better job than this. I don't know if it just pops out of there. It looks like it will now. It's pretty loose to the top even. I don't know if I've seen that little trick before. They had it keyed into the top here with a little tiny plug right there. Yeah, I think I'm just going to make a whole new one of these. The whole thing is just pretty crappy, really. And you know, right here it's so thin. I mean, it's, you know, from the, it's just waiting to break right there anyway with any pressure. And I just think we can make a better one of these and do a better job. I've got a little block of spruce here that it's, you know, got the grain orientation in the same way. This is a bigger piece of well, the grain's bigger in this than it is in this, but that shouldn't make too much difference. And it's big enough to make this out of, and I'm just going to get started making it. I think I'm just going to use the old one here as kind of a template, so that I ended up cutting one out that's pretty similar in size. I'm going to leave it just a little bit more meaty around the back here, maybe a tiny bit on the edges, but mostly around this back right here. Just a little bit, because there's a much bigger flat area here than what they used. I'm going to trace it lightly, so I've got this will be the outside edge here, this arc, so I have an idea. And then I'm going to pull it back from that arc a little bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to trace the back side here just to get an idea. And so therefore this block, if I made it that shape and left the pencil lines, it'll be slightly bigger than the one that's here. So, and it won't be a lot bigger, just a little bigger, and that's all I'm really going for. So now I'm just going to kind of, on my disc sander, I'm basically just going to disc in this profile here to just so that it'll fit the contour of the sides here. And then this back, I'll just kind of round it off nice and even to fit this back side here. Okay, I've spent about 10 minutes so far, maybe not that much time, just making this block fit up in here. And it's hard to show this, but these little cleats, the little kerfing that comes around, and bottom and top, they both meet right up with the block perfectly. Actually, I say that, I might have a little bit more tweaking to do there, but not very much. It's pretty darn good. And when I've got it meeting up, then the sides and the top and everything looks like it meets up good. So maybe I just need to take a hair off of the width of it right now. The front curvature matches the sides really good. I'll be able to clamp it down good and tight. I don't think we're doing anything but good stuff here. I truly don't think that neck block was meant to stay in there. It's pretty bad. It really is. It's still a little proud to the sides. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just take this bottom edge and clean it up real good so that it matches the bottom, actually the top. It actually matches it really good right now, but it's really rough, and I want to smooth it out a little bit so that the glue and everything will stick to it. Pretty darn good, so we'll just clean that up a little bit, and I think we're ready to glue it in there. It matches up really tight everywhere, and all I'm going to do now is just take a pencil mark and put it across here and across here, and I'm just going to level this down and leave the pencil mark, and that way it'll be very close when after I get it glued in here. We won't have to do too much here to clean it up to make it match the back. And I've got it all marked, by the way, in orientation of the way it goes. There's a T for top, so this end goes to the top, this end goes to the back, B for back, and this F, I had that on there originally so I wouldn't get it turned around, and this is the front. But that, I don't need the front anymore, obviously, with the T and the B. But anyway, I keep it marked so that, you know, everything stays oriented in the same way so that it fits up really good. I don't think you could get one to fit any better than that as a replacement. So now we'll just clean this edge up here just to bring it down to those pencil marks. There's old glue and stuff on these sides down in here, and I'm going to clean that all up, clean this block up a little bit here, just get it all good and clean, and then glue it and clamp it. Okay, I think you can see down in there, it's all real clean, fresh wood now to glue it to it. This side is loose from the top, this side is still tight to the top, so I'm just going to try to clean out any old junk that's in here. And we'll glue the side to it at the same time. Let me get all my clamps lined up and we'll glue her in place. Well, I got to be honest, I don't know whenever I've had a more complicated clamp up. This is pretty complicated. There was a crack here that I've been watching all along, and it was finally decided to open up, and so I've got glue down in that crack, and you can see a little tiny bit of squeeze out down in here, perhaps. I've got all these, I've got the sides clamped to the block, I got the top clamped up here. I mean, I have clamps in every direction, and I've just got to hold my breath and not touch anything, because I think I've got it clamped perfectly at the moment. So I just don't want to touch anything and let this thing set for a few hours. I think we're good.